What's up, guys? My name is Esteban from Paradis skate shop in Madrid, Spain. What you're about to watch is a talk that Brittain, one of the best skateboard photographers of all time, gave in our shop back in November of 2023. Grant started taking photos at Del Mar skate park back in the 70s, and in the 80s he became the photo editor of Transworld Magazine. In this talk, Grant goes through a lot of his most iconic photos with people like Tony Hawk, Steve Caballero, Rodney Mullen, Christian Hosoi, and many others. I would like to give a special thanks to the people at Moment Festival that make this all possible, and of course to Grant for coming all the way from California to our little shop in Madrid to give this talk. Hope you all enjoy this talk and hope to see you soon here in Madrid. Bye bye.
Hey everybody, thanks for coming. I'm Grant Brittain, and this is the first time I've been to Madrid, so I'm kind of stupid. So yeah, I came over. I live in Southern California in Encinitas, and I've been shooting photos for 43 years, skate photos, and I have a little slideshow here. Can everybody see, kind of? Or if anybody wants to sit down or whatever, you know. Yeah, you can see the computer. Well, this first photo is of me skating in 1974. You can see the date over there. One of my friends, we were surfing. My car's in the back with my surfboard on top. And, you know, homemade board, Cadillac wheels, you know, chukka boots, you know, desert boots, and we just got done surfing, and hey, let's go skate at the high school. And that's the high school I went to. I graduated in 1973. So I am old. So in 1978, a new skate park opened in Del Mar. And my next door neighbor was Wally Inouye, Tom Inouye, pro skater. And he helped design the park, and he goes, hey, you want to work at the Del Mar Skate Ranch? It's a new park. And I go, heck yeah. I said, hell yeah. I probably said, fuck yeah. And I started working there in 1978 and worked there for 6 years and ended up as the manager of the park and of the pro shop. Had a shop kind of like this. And in 1979, about 6 months after I started working there, I had been watching skate photographers come in and shoot photos of the pros. And I go, that looks kind of fun. And I was into art. I was an art major at the college. And I thought maybe I could, you know, try, you know, shooting skating and see how I did. And I borrowed my roommate's camera. He loaded the film in my camera. It was some Kodachrome 64 slide film. And I didn't know how to shoot. And he just said, have the sun behind you. This is way before digital. And just focus the lens to where it looks like it's in focus. And then expose it, for the f-stop, I didn't know what an f-stop was. And he just said, match the little circle on the needle. And so that's a picture of me taking pictures of Tony Hawk. Mickey Vukovic shot that. But that was my first photo. That was the photo that came out of my camera on the first roll. So that's Kyle Jensen, a local Del Mar skater, and that's off the first roll I shot. And I went, well, that's kind of cool. And then a friend of mine, Sonny Miller, took me into he's a skater, surfer, he's a photographer, cinematographer, and he was a Del Mar local. And one day he took me into the dark room at the college, and I printed one of my pictures, and from that day on, I just, you know, I knew what I wanted to do. I knew I wanted to do photography, and, you know, if you've ever worked in a dark room, you kind of know how it is, you know, where you just get the light bulb goes off over your head, and you go, oh, I want to do this. But you start shooting your friends. This is one of my friends, Bill Billing, and you practice, taking photos on your friends, because you don't really want to ask some pro that's at the park to shoot. So I would ask all my friends and the locals that I knew to just shoot roll after roll after roll. That's Wally Inouye, the guy that got me the job at the park. And there was a period after maybe a year and a half, digital, you can look at the print right away. You can look at the image right away, so you know all your mistakes. Back in the film days, you wouldn't know your mistakes till, God, like days later when you got the film back, and then you still didn't know what you were doing wrong. So that's Owen Nieder, a local. So I started to notice that my photos got a little better composed, and you get that one photo once in a while where, wow, I think I'm getting the hang of it. That's the Del Mar crew back in those days. The guy in the yellow helmet is Tony Hawk. And then the Stelmaskis, Dave Eccles, Owen Nieder in the middle in the flyaway. The Stelmaskis' dad with the mustache. You had to have a mustache back then. That's Tony Hawk. I shot that with a twin lens reflex camera looking down. I think I shot 3 photos, and that was one of the photos. I just said, Tony, look at me. That's Mickey Vukovic. That's the side of the Del Mar Skate Ranch. Mickey Vukovic is a really great writer and photographer also. Stevie Caballero. So I knew these guys, but I was Grant that worked at the skate park and swept out the pools. And so I didn't line this shot up with him. I wasn't in the stage where I could ask somebody to do something unless I knew him. So I just kind of waited off to the side and waited for him to do this ollie in the little pool at Del Mar. The board is bigger than he is. Alan Losi at a contest. So when I started working for the magazine, we started the Transworld in 1983. And I never had a fisheye before then. And when you're a skate photographer, you just want a fisheye. And before that, you shoot with all these other wide-angle lenses that are cheaper. And we had a Pentax camera with a fisheye, and then my camera, I had a normal lens and a 20-millimeter lens on my Minolta, so I'd switch cameras back and forth. And we had no money when we were starting Transworld. But I wanted a fisheye more than anything, and I think every skate photographer wants a fisheye. Mike McGill, the first, he learned 540s, the McTwist in 1984 in Sweden, and he came back to Del Mar and did this at a contest, and it blew everybody's minds. Everybody they just called it the trick. In fact, on the cover of the magazine, it was called The Trick. Christian Hosoi. Eye contact. I really like eye contact when you can get it with a skater. It can make the whole photo. Christian Hosoi winning a contest at Del Mar. So around Del Mar, it was so small, and it was just all this energy, It was like really fantastic. You really felt it, and you knew almost everybody. Skateboarding was so small in the 80s that you knew everybody, or you knew, you recognized them, or they were a friend of a friend, so it was really a small crew. This is Tony Hawk at Del Mar. But I worked at Del Mar, so I was there every day, and somebody would show up to skate, and I'd run outside. I'd have somebody else watch the counter, and I'd run outside and shoot photos. Tony Hawk. This is a Nixon billboard in Asia later on, like 30 years later. Tony Hawk jumping from the half pipe into the bank slalom. Tony Hawk with the fisheye, almost getting hit. You can see Billy Ruff in the background. That's one of those shots where you just go, whoa, I almost got hit on that one. And you do get hit now and then. Neil Blender. So they're slides, and they have a paper or plastic sleeve around them. And his thumb was cut off, and I never used that photo. And then about a few years ago, I took off the sleeve, the carrier, and his thumb was in. So right now, I'm kind of into finding photos that never ran for one reason or another. They're 40 years ago, 35 years ago, it was, you could shoot a whole session and use one photo and all the others didn't get used. So it's all about the shadows. With my photography, I'm really into the shadows. And I just kind of isolated this shadow out of this picture. That's Neil Blender at Del Mar. Neil Blender, the Stacy Peralta driving the car, little diptych. Tony Hawk, you can see our shadows. Usually, I look through the viewfinder because you can't really, tell what's going on, compose, the image when you're going like this, it's all like crooked but I lucked out on this one. So that's Tony Hawk. Dave Swift, who I worked with at Transworld, and we started the skateboard mag a few years ago in 2004. He was the editor and photographer. Lester Kasai at Del Mar in the half pipe. So this is all the 80s. Mike McGill in the square pool. I really like long exposures and get the blur, motion blur, and then with the lighting, the lighting is different temperatures, so you get this green glow with this particular kind of lighting. And then two flashes. You can see my little flash in the background. Tony Hawk at Sanoland. This is 1983. This is still skatable. This is right by my house in Cardiff. Tony Hawk. He's probably 13, maybe 14. And then, so a few years ago, Vans did a shoe with him, or a slip-on shoe. And that's the same place. That's at Sanoland. This is in Florida, in Orlando, Florida. Middle of the night, you can't skate this place. Every time the security guard, and everybody who street skates knows about security and the cops. And every time the security would come by in his truck, we'd be hiding in the bushes and then run back out and shoot photos. So this is midnight. That's Neil Blender, just looking, doing his nails or something. I don't know. Not checking his phone. There were no phones. Neil Blender. John Grigley in Texas, clown ramp. So this photo caused a lot of controversy when I was I shot it for, we were doing a soul issue for Transworld in the end of 86. And I shot it a lot looser, and then I cropped it like this. And the art director, David Carson, and I loved this image, and we wanted to use it for the cover. And we didn't want any cover blurbs, no writing on the cover. We just wanted just that, the logo. And everybody at the magazine hated it because it wasn't color, it wasn't guy in the sky, it was just a guy pushing. And I tried to tell them that, it's what every skateboarder does is push, At any level, that's all you do is push. And it's getting from point A to point B. I mean, everybody can relate to this, I think. So, and they didn't understand it. He wasn't pro. He was my assistant, Todd Swank. He was my darkroom. He printed all the photos and was a photographer. And we had this giant fight, and then I left at the end of the meeting. I got mad and just split. And I was away for a couple of days, and then Larry Balma, who was in charge of the magazine, who owned the magazine, called me, and I went in and talked to him. And then I didn't think they were going to use it on the cover, and then this came out. And with no cover blurbs, and I do not remember After the fight, I don't remember how this ended up as the cover. It just did. So when it came out, half of the people who saw it, half of our subscribers and readers didn't get it. They were like, what's Transworld? Are they crazy or what are they doing over here? But I think it loosened up the whole way magazine covers were done, and you could run, a photo, more of a artistic, soul, photo, and not just action, with lots of blurbs and fluorescent colors, from the 80s, new wave, whatever you want to call it. So it came out, and half the people hated it and half the people got it, but a lot of people didn't get it. This is a trip to Arizona with a bunch of people. That's Jim Gray skating. So we'd just get in cars and drive out to Arizona. And whenever we found out there was these big pipes, and now they're used to, send water to the desert. Steve Caballero, this is probably 87. They were fumigating the house next door to him, and his shirt totally matched. But you can tell what year it is by his hair. And that's on the same trip, San Jose. Steve Caballero, LAX Banks. So this photo is a friend. This was a contents page. This is a friend of mine from Australia, Sin. And, no Photoshop. In those days, you used fishing wire. And I just kind of hung it above. I don't know what it means. It just looked kind of cool. Mark Gonzalez, Huntington Beach. With the Kodachrome sprockets. Mark Gonzalez with a Vivienne Westwood crown on. Mark Gonzalez. I have a lot of Mark Gonzalez. You know why? Because he's the best. So he goes, what do you want me to do? And I go, just make faces. Christian Asoy and Tony. They were friends, but they were like each other's, nemesis, kind of. But they were friends. Everybody thought they were enemies, but it was the media that kind of made them, enemies. They're frenemies. Caballero and Houston on a skate trip. We'd go downtown. Wherever we were, we'd go downtown and find street skating spots. We'd go with some locals, and they'd show us some good spots. Lester Kasai, shot in my living room. Christo, the artist, had just come to San Diego, and I got turned on by Christo. Christian Asoy in Arizona. Tommy Guerrero at China Banks in San Francisco. It's still there. Thrasher did a really good video thing on it. So that's Glenn Friedman shooting Lance Mountain at the Combi. And there was no room for me, so I kind of shot from above. Rodney Mullen from below. Just kind of laid down on the ground and had him go over my camera a bunch of times. I'm going fast because there's a lot of photos. Rodney Mullen, Carson, about 87, 88. GSD, Gary Scott Davis. Shell Bowl. Natus Copus. Like a foot plant, fast plant, whatever you want to call it, off fire hydrant. This is kind of famous because he was the first one to kind of do the hydrants. That's another shot. I just started using this. I never used this photo back in the day. This is one of the stills shot from that session. This is at Venice, Natus Copus. So this is Natus Copus and Gons pointing at Mike Valley because they were not much older, but Vallely was the young gun coming up, and he had broken his nose, and they were pointing at his nose. This is 87, I think. Gonzalez, just, you know, we didn't go to shoot portraits, I just shot a portrait during a skate session in LA. So this kind of tells a story. This is Chris Miller. You can see the shadows on the far right. You can tell what's going on. I had a camera on a pole, and then a hose coming down, a shutter release, but you squeezed an air ball. I don't even think they make them anymore. An air bulb. And I shot 2 rolls, a roll of black and white and a roll of color. And some were just too crazy, cropped, because I couldn't see, you know. And then this shot came out kind of cool. But the shadow, again, shadows are so important because they can tell the story. So we shot this at Upland, because he always rides big pipes, and I shot him in a little pipe. Jim Gray in San Clemente. Mullet on the right. So this was for an article called Street Sheet in Transworld that GSD did, and they went thrift store shopping and came back like this from this thrift store. Nodis and Gons. They're easy to shoot. This is Paul Schmidt testing skateboards in Dallas. Christian Asoy and Grasso standing on the deck. This is a Rocket Air at West Skilly's Ramp, Westminster. Gons Street Sad Plant. This is in Houston or Fort Worth. No, Dallas, Fort Worth, yeah. This is 84 of Caballero at Kona, the one of the oldest skate parks in the world. It's still there. So this is Bones Brigade, older and the newer guys. Guerrero's missing. Who else? Yeah. And my shadow's in the picture because Stesic was shooting photos, and then I snuck in there, hey, can I take a photo too? And I didn't even look to see if my shadow was in there, but I think that famous photo of them all in trench coats, I think that was the same session that Stesic shot. And Stesic was one of the guys I used to look up to, you know, coming in, you know, late 70s, early 80s, he was the person I looked at his photography to figure it out. Lance Mountain, because he builds ramps. This is the Chin ramp, and in Oceanside, California, they just built this ramp in the middle of this field, and without permits, you couldn't do this anymore. You get arrested. So yeah, I went up in the helicopter and I shot this. This isn't like a weird drone with some little doll. This is a real helicopter. So this part, it's where the Bones Brigade guys run up and see the ramp for the first time, and they kind of get up and start skating. That's Tony Hawk, 540. Oh. So that's Stacy with the big video camera. So, and I kind of I had nothing. They just invited me, and I had to kind of shoot around everybody and stay, you know, I kind of tried to stay out of the video, you know, angles and everything, and just kind of shot. So when we shot, let's see what's up next. Nope, not yet. Lance Mountain. If this had been a second later, he would have been grabbing, and it wouldn't have been as good of a photo. So I always try to shoot channel plants and get it right before they grab, if you can. That's the best time. So when we shot this, they didn't even know I shot this when I was shooting it until a few days later. And because it was all for video, and I kind of just stayed out of the way and shot. So I shot with a long lens from the other side of the ramp. Iconic, I guess. And so this was a few years ago. So 30 years later, they're all young men here, and they're all old men here. And then they got Papa Smurf to skate. Never mind. That's Steve Caballero. So, but we had him doing all the, like in the same spot. So, and pink shirt. So this was from a sequence. This is not as, and I was shooting a sequence going off these kind of small stairs. And I just love this photo because it's just that moment. And it's in skateboarding, you know, it's about the landing. And this is called The Landing. And I love the way it was shot into the sun and his fingers. And, you know, but that's the moment of impact. Jeff Phillips, Frank Hawk at Virginia Beach. Jeff won. He probably won $1,000, which nowadays would be, you know, I have pictures of skaters with checks, $300 first place. And yeah, it's come a long way since then. Christian Asoy, power slide. We didn't go to shoot this. We went to shoot something else, and I didn't like the way it looked, so we shot. He's just hauling ass down the street and doing big power slides. Neil Blender in Vancouver. Same session. Handout. Vancouver skate park, or North Vancouver. Steve Alba. Upland. Jeff Phillips, one of the best frontside bonelesses in the business. Jeff Phillips. Stevie Caballero. Skaters would just ride anything. You know, they just pull a ramp and ride whatever they could because all the skate parks were gone. Lopes. Just walk through the middle of the course with that shirt on. There he is again. Joe Lopes at his ramp up in San Francisco area. Jeff Grosso in Atlanta. So this was my typical, I'd take this and more on a trip to Europe or wherever we were going. And then this was a Europe trip. I came back from Europe with all this film. And you don't know if it's any good, you know. It's easier to take photos now, unless your card crashes or your computer crashes or you totally fuck up, you know, you just. But yeah, it was interesting to come back with all that film and X-ray machines, trying to get them not to X-ray it. Yeah. Stevie Caballero, he owned a Porsche. So. Mark Gonzalez, Life's a Beach ad. Dwayne Peters at Nude Bowl. Acid drop on the hip. Eddie Elguera at Nude Bowl. Christian Asoy at Upland. Nobody does that trick back then, really. So Lance, this is at Tahoe, and Lance whispered to me, "Hey, I'm going to set my board on fire." And I went, "What?" You know, we're in the forest, you know. Yeah, we're in the forest. And yeah, but it was cool. Lance Mountain in Sweden. Mike Smith at Upland, Acid Drop. This is a Madrid ad. So this is Baldy. It's been ridden since the 60s, probably, on little dinky boards, and it's still there. Chris Miller. This was going to be, I wanted to use this as a cover, and he rode for Gullwing Trucks, and he's riding indies, and so the higher-ups, higher than me, didn't want to use it because they didn't want to piss off our advertiser who was Gullwing. And then on the next Thrasher, they had the same trick. Mofo shot it the next day, and he had knee pads and a bandage on. And then I was so bummed that it couldn't be the cover. And, just political magazine bullshit, pretty much. Craig Johnson and Grahalski had a contest. Grahalski at Cedar Crest. Went there once, shot one day, and got a lot of photos. Craig Johnson at Blue Ramp in Dallas. John Gibson in Dallas at Clown Ramp. Somebody else's flash went off and it made it like a double image. That was the problem with shooting contests. You have all these people with cameras, and if you're shooting a slow shutter speed, then you get, sometimes it's a mess, where you can't run it. This is a typical crowd back in the 80s at Virginia Beach. Kids trying to get autographs or boards or shirts or stickers or whatever. Lance Mountain. There were people eating at a restaurant inside that glass right there. Another Rodney Mullen. The rule is you shoot the sun behind you, but I shot into the sun on this, and then the shadow came toward me. Notascopus with Todd Swank shooting photos on the left. Mike Billaley standing there. This is in Japan, in Fuji City. That's Pierre Andre that owns Emerica and Etnies and all that. That's Orb. The guy in the is it Chin? Yeah, Chin Ramp that says maps to the skaters' homes. That's him. That was Embarcadero. This is China. This is China Banks. Bryce Knights. Julian Stranger. This never got used because it was crooked. I didn't use it, and it was kind of cropped. But then a couple of years ago, I looked at it again and I liked it. Tommy Guerrero. This is all in the same session. When I went up one trip, all those photos at China Banks and this and a bunch of others are all the same trip. Not this one, but the other ones. Tommy Guerrero. So this is Steve Rocco, and this cop just walked by. I didn't rent him or anything. Chuck Treese portrait. Chuck Treese in San Francisco, Hunters Point. Salton Sea Pool. I've been there a few times and I never had a skater. I went there with a skater once, and the water there, it was all graffitied, and the water was just like, there's probably a dead guy in it. And yeah, we didn't want to empty it. And it's not there, it got bulldozed. Ron Cameron at a small board. I have photos of him doing it barefoot on a regular board too. That's a Blockhead Ramp. Eric Dressen, Todd Swank standing down there. This is the Oceanside contest. Jim Thiebaud in San Francisco. This is the same trip. This is John Thomas in San Diego at Cesar Chavez Park. Yeah, Chicano Park, yeah. That's not a skate park. It's just no extra lighting. It was just sunlight lighting him up. There's a little skate park there now, yeah. Steve Olson, Upland. Ray Underhill, just on a trip, and the light was really nice, so he just skated back and forth. Ray Underhill at Fallbrook Ramp. Christian Asoy, Christair. Tony Hawk. Steve Caballero in one of his bands, maybe Shovelhead, or it wasn't. Not the Faction, it was later. Frankie Hill. That kid came up to me as a grown man with a beard. That was me that was me in that photo, and he looked exactly the same except he had a beard. So I used to, when I was a photo editor, I used to write, people would send their photos, and I would send them back with a little like help. And then finally I just wrote everything on one page, and we ran it in the magazine. It was just tips, photo tips. You can look at it later. Chris Miller. Thomas Taylor, who just passed away a year or so ago. This is on the East Coast. Brian Lottie, he opened his trunk of his car and he had all these doll parts. And we just had him throw them up in the air and then put down his arms real fast. Yeah. What are you doing with all these doll parts? Brian Lottie. This is in San Diego. The airplanes fly right over this bank. 1993. Matt Hensley, who changed skateboarding, another era of skateboarding. He was probably 19 in this photo. This is the cover of Transworld. Matt Hensley. Matt Hensley. This is where he grew up skating, this bank. Same bank. So get all angles, same trick, different angle. Rick Howard. This is like a funhouse mirror, at a carnival. That was the cover of Transworld. Was it backside 180 over the spine? Backside 180? Yeah. So. Matt Mumford. This is an Airwalk ad. He cropped his fingers out. But this is when skating started to get big. Everything got bigger, longer, crazier. That's Alfonso Rawls. When he was a kid, he helped paint, that's at his school, and he helped paint this mural when he was a kid. Bonzo Bridge. Matt Mumford. We hauled all these obstacles out to this, it was a pedestrian bridge. It was built in the 1930s. And then hauled all these obstacles out there, and then the cops came, and they sat there in their car and went, they didn't know what to get us for, so they left. So, can you understand me? Yeah. Okay, all right. Because usually people laugh at stuff like that. This is a mistake photo. My flash didn't go off, but I kind of liked it. So even the mistakes in skateboard photography, sometimes the mistakes, well, in any kind of photography, sometimes the mistakes are, come out okay. This Donger, that stadium's not there. That's in San Diego. Kianlu, that bank's not there anymore, and the stadium is gone. They built a new stadium. Jason Carney, Roof Gap. This is a cover of Transworld. Anybody know who this is? Yep. Yeah, Rob Dyrdek. Before he had a TV show. Small wheels, baggy pants. It's got to be from the 90s. Jamie Thomas, he'd write inspiring words on the deck of his boards. Adrenaline. That's at my high school. That's where I went to high school. It's heel flip, kick flip. Yeah. From the left side to the right side. That's Dave Bergthold that owns Blockhead Filming. Yeah, he made it. I have a sequence of it too. Andy McDonald at Combi Pool. So Danny Way jumped out of a helicopter and slammed a few times and then finally made it. And he did it again a while later in Las Vegas.
helicopter would come and pick him up?
Yeah, for a video, for the DC video. Yeah, DC video. And then this is Bob Burnquist in his backyard has all this crazy stuff in his backyard. So he has a Hot Wheels loop. And then I shot it from like between the ramps. You're always trying different angles and, you don't know what's going to look good. He has this metal pipe in his yard. So Jamie Thomas, the leap of faith. He went down. I have a sequence of it, and he went down and went straight through his board and slammed. But at the time, it was one of the biggest, street drops. Now you have Jaws, who's just jumping off of crazy stuff. So we were this shot is when. Are these boring stories? Okay, all right. I just want to make sure I'm not boring you. I think I'm really cool, but I don't know what other people think. So I don't. So this, Jamie Thomas wanted to shoot this. He goes, I want to get, because he knew what we were going through. This is when X Games and all this stuff was going on, and the skate magazines were kind of getting pushed to the side, and the big corporations that had money, you'd go to their event and then you had to stand over here with the high school newspaper and So Jamie wanted to shoot with, maybe Dave Swift came up with the idea, but to get every photographer we knew to come and shoot him going down this rail in San Diego. And the flash going off, that's not my flash. I had a remote to the guys on the left were my assistants, and then I was setting off their flash when I would shoot the photo. So because I wanted to, because they wouldn't know when to shoot because they're just assistants. And so my camera is setting off their flashes. So that was the cover of the magazine. And we called it Media Overkill because it was just crazy back then. And then everybody gave up. Nobody wanted to deal with it anymore, so they stopped going to their events. John Reeves in San Diego. This is Jaya Bondaroff in San Diego. This is a place called Jump Ramp School at a local school. Sal Barbier and Danny Way when 8 Ball first came out. Danny's knee, I have photos of his knee, and it's the size of it's like that big, like a grapefruit. Tony Hawk with all of his medals and his Olympic torch. This is Hasselblad. You can see the little notches on the left side. That's how you know a Hasselblad photo. Eric Costin. Yeah, these guys at Girl, these guys would ride around in circles, these cyclists, on Saturdays, and they would just go round and round and round, and then he made a shirt and then would pose, and then after a while they knew he was making fun of them, and then they started saying stuff to him, like fuck off and stuff like that. Chris Miller at Baldy. Chris Miller, Zach Miller, his son, not paying attention down there. Andy McDonald. We were going to dress him up. Afterwards, we were like, we should have dressed you up as a doctor. That would have been cool. Willie Santos, this pedestrian bridge. So I'm really into portraiture. I love portraits. And this is Greg Hunt, the filmer and photographer. Carl Watson with his son. So this is a 20 by 24 inch Polaroid camera. And there were 6 or 7 in the whole world. And the film is this big and they're on rolls. And used the camera at a workshop, and then in San Francisco, there's a studio, and I rented space, and I just called probably 8 skaters, and they came day after day, and or all the same day. And he goes, "Can I bring my kid?" And I go, "Yeah, that kid's a grown man now, Elon." And then Matt Fields and his daughter and his dog. He told me a few years ago, the dog's name was Flower. And he goes, Flower died. And I only met Flower once for the shot. But this is in San Francisco, and it looks like it's Haight-Ashbury in the 60s, you know. They're pretty hippie. So this is Huffnagel. And he came up with the idea, why don't you shoot 2 photos, one of me on each side of the couch. So these photos are giant, you know, and they come out, and you know, you peel the negative off. I mean, they don't make the film anymore. The cameras exist, but they don't make the film. And each shot was $60 for each shot. Carabeth Burnside. This is at our local park. This is at the YMCA. This is Baldy again. This was in ESPN magazine. They wanted a triples photo. Not 4 people, not 2 people. They had to have 3 people. Oops. Jeff Grosso at Culver City a few years ago. Canton Russell, Fakey Ollie. Steve Caballero at Tony's Ramp. Lance Mountain in Tucson, Arizona. Guerrero was hurt. I wanted to shoot a photo of him skating, and this is all he could do because he had sprained his ankle. But that's San Francisco, where he's from. Christian Asoy, a couple years ago. Caballero at Combi Pool. Caballero. Rodney Mullen. I went to shoot him. He only skates at night by himself in the Dwindle factory. He skates around inside the factory. He doesn't like to skate in front of other people. We shot this, and he goes, "Hey, I've got this other spot out back. Do you think this would make a good photo?" And he took me to a shipping container, and I go, "Wow, that's cool." And then I took one photo to see how it looked, and that's not there. That's Clyde. Oh shit, I told the story in the wrong place. So this is a different photo. This is him behind the Dwindle factory in the middle of the night. It's Clyde Singleton. What? Somebody ask a question. That's Zane Timpson, who just passed away a couple years ago from a heart attack. He was one of my son's best friends. Craig Stesick, that's one of his air guns. That's all his art in behind. More. Who?
Cody Lockwood.
Yeah, Cody Lockwood. You're right. Thanks. I was like, got a brain fart. That's my son. They dug up Del Mar in 2015, and they found this. They were going to build another building there, and it was the bottom of the bank slalom. The bank slalom used to be about 15 feet tall, and they found just the transitions still buried there. It had been buried for like 28 years, and we had 24 hours to skate it, and then they ripped out all the concrete. And I called my son, "You got to come down and skate." And he goes, "Where is it again?" You know, after I told him, "That's where I used to work. That's where the skate park used to be." But he came and, 360 flip. So this is the photo of Rodney, and I put a flash behind him, and he goes, "Does it look good?" And I go, "Yeah, it looks good. It looks really good." So you don't need a lot of equipment to shoot photos, you know. I used one flash and a fisheye lens, and that was it. The agony of defeat. Every skater is, that's that moment where you go, God, when am I going to make it? That's Riley Hawk in his garage. Bucky Lasik at his, he had a backyard bowl that was enormous, and he'd have events there. This is near my house. Bucky Lasik. Steve Olson and Dave Hackett at the skate park. Hackett's showing off his sweater. Oh no, that's not a sweater. There's a joke where it's as soon as Hackett starts skating, everybody's like, how long will it be before he takes his shirt off? He always takes off his shirt. There he is. Steve Olson. You know, Dave and Steve have been skating since the 70s, and they're still ripping. Steve Olson. He's like an actor and stuff. So this is these pipes. They're like an hour and a half away from my house, and I heard they were destroying them. It's at a concrete factory in Corona, and I got Zach Miller and Chris Miller to go there with me, and they were jackhammering them apart as we spoke, or as we skated. Chris Miller, just available light. Chris Miller. I like how his hand is touching his shadow's hand. Who is it? I'm spacing out. I'll think of it in a minute. There he is again. So that's an 8-foot ollie. This is at Tony Hawk's ramp. Oh, Jimmy Wilkins. Yeah, Jimmy Wilkins. Sorry. I'm old. And then these pipes they were redoing the freeway by my house, but these pipes are pretty small, you know, so I had to get a little guy to skate them. And that's Lincoln Ueda's kid. He could actually do things in it. Bigger guys couldn't ride these pipes. They were too small. They could fakie back and forth, but that was it. This is a park by my house, Linda Vista. This is Chris Miller with his son, Zach. Chris Miller at the same spot. Yeah, this was going to be the cover of Juice, and then somebody died, and they used a photo of the dead guy. So instead. Lizzie Armanto at Tony's ramp. Lizzie the same day. I was given a class on skate photography at the UCSD, and this is one of the people that took the class. He also skated. So this is just long exposure, you know, probably 2-second exposure, 3-second exposure, and then the flash freezes. I think I hand fired it. I fired the camera and then flashed him at the peak of the trick.
All your work is on film?
Pardon me?
All your work is on film, or you should?
No, this is digital. This is later. So all these photos are digital. We started shooting digital around 1996, I think. The first digital cameras. We got one, and I borrowed one from the snowboard magazine, Transworld Snowboarding, and didn't know how to work it, just used it all weekend at a contest, and then got it back on Monday and said to Dave Swift, hey, we got to shoot digital. I don't know how to process it on the computer, but we had to have somebody else do it on the computer for us because we didn't know how to work computers. We knew how to work cameras, but it saved a lot of money in film. We were shooting Hasselblad medium format. We would use that for stills, and then for sequences, we switched over to digital. And I went because I was sending film all over the world to different photographers, and our budget was just crazy, you know, film budget. So, yeah, digital was a godsend, you know. It saved a lot of money. This is Mike Lorman. That's recently. He's he's from Orange County. He's in bands and stuff. I think he was just over here touring with his band. That's his daughter. She's a full punk rocker. She's a roller skater. That's her. That's at the local park by my house, Poots Park. Wes Kramer. He was smoking a joint, and I showed this show at a high school. And I'm like going through all my slides, and then I got to this, and I went, oops. And I kept going. The teachers did not like that. John Reeves just threw his skateboard up in the air. This is one of the Hashimoto brothers from Japan. And we tried to, there's a photo that Dave Swift took of Neil Blender at Claremont Pool, and he's doing a handout like this. And we were looking at it on the phone, and then we were trying to reproduce it exactly the same. So I really get a lot out of my peers, you know. I'm always looking at my friends that shoot and get ideas, and then I steal their ideas. So, not really. This is for the company. No. I'm spacing out. That was in LA. Zach Miller. Kevin Staub. He's still living in the 80s.
Purple hair.
Yeah. He'll have white hair or purple hair. Yeah. This is just a couple of months ago. So this was a wedding announcement. This is Amelia Brodka and her husband, Alex, and that's Eddie Elguera. He's actually a minister. And this was for their wedding announcement. This is Hermina Reynolds from Hawaii. So I go down on Wednesdays just to stay loose, you know. You can't quit shooting photos. You always have to shoot. And so on Wednesdays and Sundays, it's when all the locals show up at our local park. And then a lot of people will come that, you know, aren't locals, and you're always guaranteed to get a good photo, you know. And this is like this I shot with my living room light and no flashes, and I just wanted to do long exposures, and it just reminded me of those ballet type photos. I just kind of wanted to show just the beautiful lines you can get from skateboarding. This is this is for Nixon. They did a collab with the Rolling Stones out at the Nude Bowl, and they painted that on the bowl in the evening, and then next day they came back and there was graffiti all over it. So the guy had to repaint it, and we shot. It was I don't know what Celsius, but it was 107, middle of the summer. It was hot. What? Yeah, no, yeah. This is Christian Asoy. So this was for Nixon watches, and then at the Rolling Stone store they had photos in London, and they did a series of watches. That's the Nude Bowl. It's still there. It's been ridden since the early 70s. And this is a few weeks ago. This is Bryce Wetstein, and she was drawn. She's funny. She's a local skater and skates for Stereo, and she always has a parasol, or I didn't know what she was going to do when we got there. But whenever I shoot with her, I'm always exhausted after, because it's just, she's so much energy and craziness. This is the ramp in her backyard. This is in San Diego Magazine. We're almost done, I think. This is a friend of mine. This is all at my local park. I like to shoot at night. You can just be more creative. You never know how blurs are going to look. It's Peter Hewitt. he's got to be late 40s, maybe. Spacing out. So this is all at the local park. That's Dave Swift. It's another Hermina Reynolds. Christian Asoy. That's a proper rock and roll. Same time. People have birthday parties there and memorials. It's a great place to meet up. This is Zane Timpson, who died. Bruno Peters from Antwerp, Belgium. He passed away a couple months ago. This is in Charleroi, Belgium. Otis Bartholomew. He's a great musician, friend. He passed away a few months ago. So this is the last thing you see before you wake up in the hospital. So, no, I dodged it. I don't know how I didn't get hit. That's Rob Roscop at a contest in St. Louis. I think this is the end. I got hit by a flying board in Dallas. I think this is it. That's it. So you just sat through, 230 images.
Si alguien tiene alguna pregunta que le quiera hacer, no. A ver, te paso el micrófono, ¿vale?
Te escuchamos.
So, Grant,
Hey, thanks for coming, everybody. I'm super stoked. It's my first trip to Madrid, so I'm really happy, and I'm glad you came. Thank you.
I would like just to ask one question. You told us about the history of that picture, the push.
Yeah.
So, that, the fight or the argument was the reason to use it as the front of your book?
Pardon me? Sorry.
Because of you had an argument about this picture being in the cover of the Mac, you use it after for the book or not?
No, not really. I just always love that image, and it's kind of one that I'm identified with, like people know that's a shot I took, even if they don't know the story. And I know that everybody can't, like I said, everybody can relate to the act of pushing, because unless you're a bird skater and you just drop in, and the way he's pushing is the proper way to push. And I just liked it because it was just, kind of classic, and it's not a real action photo. There's a photo on the back of the book of Tony that I didn't see for 30 years, and it came back. I got some old layouts. Before computers, there was a time, and we did the layouts by hand with X-Acto knives and rulers and triangles, and you burnish type onto the page, and it was very labor intensive. And so I got some layouts about 3 years ago. I got some layout boards. Transworld was stopping printing. They're still online, but they don't really exist anymore. And the editor, Jamie Owens, brought me boxes with the original layouts from the first year or two. And on the back of one of the art boards, there was a photo. It was a slide, and I go, "What's this?" And I took it off, and I hadn't seen it since 1984, probably, and I never saw it again, and it was taped to the back. And Tony had asked me about this photo. It's a frontside air in the half pipe at Del Mar. He would always ask me, "Yeah, sure, pull it out." He would always ask me, "Whatever happened to that photo?" And I go, "I don't know. We lost a lot of photos. Like the McTwist on the cover of the magazine, don't know where that exact shot is gone. I don't know what happened to it." And So, yeah, I ran down and got a really big scan made out of it, and then I asked the publisher, we were almost done with the book, and I go, can I put this on the back cover? And he goes, you can do whatever you want, and I put it on the back cover. But sometimes I think about what people think about a photo, and I don't care, and if I like it, it's, with the book, I was like, I tried to do it where people liked it, but then there were photos that meant something to me, and I would use it, so it's my fucking book, So, you know what I mean? So they just say, yeah, you can do whatever you want. So, but that swank photo, the pushing photo, is probably one of my favorite photos, and,
Okay, I got a question for you. Why did you decide to leave the Transworld and go to found the Skateboard Mag? And then, why did you quit Skateboard Mag? What did it end?
There's two questions that are... So, Transworld got bought by corporation, the LA Times, and then they got bought. It was a group of newspapers, and they bought a few magazines, and they didn't know what to do with a skateboard magazine. So then they sold it, and it ended up with Time Warner, which is a giant company, and then AOL bought Time Warner. Remember AOL? Yep. Then you're old, huh? Yeah. You still have dial-up, huh? Yeah. So they bought it, and we started getting milk ads and makeup ads, and it just got crazy. Army and Navy ads, and people are going, what the hell's going on over there? And we're selling, we had to, the usual story, our ad guys, you got to tell them this, and it was when we would add a lot more ads, then we get more editorial too. So we'd add 16 pages of ads, and then it would come out to 32 pages altogether. So the other 16 pages, were skate photos. So got tired of that, telling that story. And then they kept firing people that were above us that were cool, the publisher, and they finally fired one of our friends, and we got to start our own magazines. I've been saying for a couple of years, we got to start our own magazine. But we didn't know how, because we worked for other people, you don't know all the back end stuff doing a magazine. So we finally got a guy that used to work at Transworld, and he's kind of had a lot of money, and he backed it. And then we had all our partners. We had 7 partners, which is a whole another story. And but we wanted the best people, so we took a bunch of people. We left Transworld one day, and we took Atiba Jefferson with us, and his brother worked at Soul Technology, so he came in as the art director. And then Kevin Wilkins, he was a writer for Transworld. He came with us, and there were 2 people. There was our ad guy left Transworld, and we all left in one day. And then it got put. Nobody knew at Time Warner. Nobody knew that we had left until it was in the Wall Street Journal. There was a skater we knew that worked at the Wall Street Journal, and he did an article on it. And then New York just freaked out. They go, what the hell's going on out there? And they fired the guy that was in charge at the time. And they tried to hire a couple of us back, and we said no. And we started the Skateboard Mag. A few months after that, but we had been kind of planning the Skateboard Mag and for a few months, but didn't tell anybody. And then left and started the Skateboard Mag, and we did that I worked there till 2016. My wife's gone. She knows everything. 2016. Oh, we sold, hi. We sold it to the barracks. It's like 2008 when the bubble burst.
I remember that.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
I mean,
But-
everybody was in,
But what happened? What happened then? When you
So
sold
we
it?
sold. We were getting smaller and smaller,
Yep.
and we didn't want to go into debt because we were the owners. And so Steve Barra came to Dave Swift and I, and he wanted to start a skateboard magazine like the Barracks magazine. And we said, well, why don't you buy our magazine? It's already going. We have subscribers and everything. And then, so we went to work for Guerra. So I worked there for a few more years, and he didn't really know how to do magazines. And then one day, I got an email, and it said, it was from, well, they were doing it in LA, and we lived in San Diego, and we would go up once a week and have meetings and things. And Dave Swift and I and the other guys lived in LA too. So went in, or got an email one day, and it was the bookkeeper asked where I wanted my vacation pay and last checks sent to. So I didn't quit. I got fired. So yeah, that's what happens when companies buy you, and they get rid of either old people or people that make the most money. So then I just went totally freelance, and that's what got me to do my book. And well, COVID got me to really work heavily on my book, because you're stuck at home and you think you're going to die, and hey, we didn't die. Great.
What do you think about the future of skateboard photography? Like, I mean, there is not that many magazines.
It's harder. It's much harder now. I do a lot of, slideshows at high schools and for the public. And there's all these kids, young, like 18-year-olds, and they shoot skate photography. And I go, well, what do you want to do with your photography? And they say, oh, I want to work for a skate magazine. And I'm like, well, you better start your own magazine, I guess, because it's changed so much from when there were, two big American magazines, and then all the European magazines and Brazilian magazines, and so it's just changed so much. I don't know what to tell people anymore. Really. I mean, and then I'll meet older skate photographers. I don't have Instagram. And you're like, how do you do business? It's just changed so much. And I've always been like, you just got to be on top of everything. And, this is part of my business, promoting my work, promoting skateboarding. It's fun. I'm 68 years old, and I don't know any other, people are retired, and I still get to shoot photos, and I had the best job in the world, I mean, it was a great job, and I'm always around young people, and had great assistants who became great photographers. And Atiba Jefferson was my assistant, and I taught him. I'm not taking credit for him because he's great without me, but I taught him. I try to teach everybody everything I know, because I can't keep it to myself. That's just selfish, so you got to pass it on. What was the question again? What a young...
Yeah, that's good.
No, there's no answer. Like, I don't know. I've always told photographers to learn every kind of photography. When I switched my art major to photography, when Sonny Miller took me into the darkroom, my goal was to learn every kind of photography, fine art, landscapes, portraits, because I never wanted to say, no, I don't know how to do that. I always wanted to be able to say yes. And I never thought when I was shooting back then that I would even that wasn't a career really, skateboard photographer back in those days, Now, to make it in skate photography, you got to work for a company, one of the main companies, or it's really difficult.
Were there any photographers at the time that you started, like skateboard photographers?
There were all the people who shot for like Skateboarder Magazine, Stesic and Goodrich and Warren Bolster and Terrebonne and all those people. And skateboarding went up and down in those days, depending on the economy or the housing market or whatever. And when skateboarder went out of business, all those photographers went over to surfing and BMX and motocross. And so when I was starting, like Mofo and I were coming up, and then we had assistants, like Mofo had Bryce Knights and Chris Ortiz and people like that. So he was training everybody from up north, for Thrasher, and I was doing the thing, in San Diego with, and we were totally different kinds of photography. This is a little raw, yeah. I didn't have I wasn't cool. Mofo was cool, So, but yeah, I just learned, when I first started, I learned by looking at Skateboarder Magazine, and I kind of got the angles by looking at photos. I was too shy to ask photographers like James Casimus. He would come to Del Mar, and I'd be like, I was the guy checking him in at the counter and giving him a Coke or whatever. I just didn't have, I couldn't say hey, ask questions. Jim Goodrich, I would ask him, because he was a local, and I go, hey, how do you do this? And he didn't, I don't even think he knew I was shooting.
Were those guys shooting with fisheye at that time? Fisheye lens?
Yeah, Warren Bolster, he was a surf photographer who started shooting skateboarding, and he brought the fisheye over to skateboarding.
Is that lens made for architecture? Or
Yeah, architecture.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I was always wondering,
Yeah.
what was...
No, and even now, nobody uses a fisheye except for action sports, And the other thing with skate photography, what I liked is that, say, people would ask so they meet you on the plane, they go, what are you doing? Oh, I'm a photographer. I'm a photographer, because they're not going to understand. And this is back when skateboarding wasn't big. And then they go, what kind of photography? And I go, oh, sports. And I don't want to get into it with them. And they go, what kind of sports? And they go, you'd say skateboarding, and they'd go, this is in the 80s and the 90s. And they go, what? So how do you make money to eat? And they don't get it, And I never did it for the money. Now I do. But yeah, it's people don't get it. So I don't like to talk about it to people who don't understand, But yeah, it was just the pioneers of, skate photography. I owe it all to them, And then with the kids now, I just tell kids, don't give up. It's like skateboarding. You can't give up on skateboarding. You got to do this same trick 1,000 times before you make it. And it's the same thing with skate photography. Just don't give up. Just don't listen to other people, except people that know more than you, and learn from all of your mistakes. And it's easier to learn now because of digital, because you can look at it. Back in the day, that chin ramp session, I didn't know what the photos looked like for 2 or 3 days. They had to go to Los Angeles, get developed. The color had to go to Los Angeles, get developed, and come back. Yeah, and you were just like, God, I hope it was good. I hope it was good.
¿Alguna otra pregunta?
Was that good, Diego?
Yeah. So I had a question. Have there ever been any epic sessions that you've taken photos of that you've gotten the photos back after developing and they're not good?
Probably, maybe not epic, but there have been sessions where there was one session I had to go back 3 times and shoot it. Shooting at night on film, guy wore all black. He's frontside rock on a rail, dark background, guy's wearing black. People would show up in black and I go, oh no, black, because it's it just blends in with the background. So, yeah, so we had to go back 2 times, and the second time I just blew it. I don't know. And then the third time I did a super long, there was a fluorescent light in the background. I did a probably 5-second exposure and then fired off the flash by hand. So I got all that ambient light in, and then he popped out. But yeah, stuff like that. I've lost film. Went to Europe and lost 6 rolls of film. And I know when I checked it into the darkroom, it was there. And I think my darkroom guy either screwed it up or swept it into the trash can or whatever, but lost, the film was gone. So I've gone, the first time I shot digital in the street, it was the old IBM cards that had, I heard it go, making noise, and I shot all day, got 3 good sequences, and gone, And then I told the skater, and digital was so new, they didn't know, the card crashed, and they didn't know what I was talking about. So, yeah. I'd shoot stills. After a while, I'd shoot film, and people would go, hey, can I look at that? Because I'd shoot film. Or no, they thought I was shooting, I was shooting film later on, and then they thought it was digital. They go, can I see that? And I go, no, it's film. You can't see it. I can open the back of the camera, but then it's gone. So, what was the question? Yeah, sorry. Questions? Ask me anything, even if they're stupid or technical questions.
How many pictures do you have in your archive?
Oh, shit.
The big shit.
Hundreds of thousands? I don't know. How many photos do I have?
In your archive.
In my what? Oh, my archive. Over 100,000. And a lot of them aren't very good. I kept everything that was in focus because I thought if I die, I don't want anything to be out of focus because then people think I'm just shitty, photographer. So I kept, but I go through it now and I'm throwing stuff away because it's like no head, because I did a lot of this, back in the day, or what's great right now with digital and a computer is I can use photos that I couldn't use a little underexposed or a little overexposed. I can fix it up and get detail or lighten it in Photoshop. So I'm finding like some of the images in here, the film didn't look that great, and then I scanned it and it looked unbelievable, So I get to use a lot of photos now that I couldn't use back in the day. So, but there's a lot. My garage is full, yeah. You can't park a car in my garage. You can barely walk. I have 2 paths through the garage. Yeah.
Fast question. In the Pooch picture, did you pick the hour of the day for the shadow or just?
Yeah, we shot 2 different days. And I had him, he's got different clothes on, and the shadows going the other way.
Okay.
And then...
so it's not random?
No, it was... I went to a coffee place, a coffee house, every day. It was near the skate park, and I drive by it every day, and I always noticed that. It was the freeway, the 5 freeway, and it was a gap in between, and the light would come through. So I have it... earlier, I have it coming the other way, and I just didn't have a shot like that. But yeah, they were like, one was in the morning and this is in the afternoon. So I did plan things out, and
yeah, you redo it.
Yeah, I'd shoot stuff now and then. I go, this would look better another way, and then I hadn't made a mistake. It was just like I didn't like the day. I hate shooting a white pool in the middle of the day, like those Rolling Stone nude bowl. They painted it white, and I got there, and it's 100, 30 something Celsius, and in the desert, and I got there, and a white pool, because you lose all definition in the pool, unless it's like later, like in the evening or whatever. But you can't see the contours of the pool, and yeah, there's no shadows. It's hard to shoot, those are flash photos, not the overview, but the other ones are flash photos. So I would underexpose a little bit, this digital, and then hit it with the flash, on my camera. I'm using, HSS, high sync, flash. And so I always underexpose a little bit, and then in Photoshop, I open it up a little bit in Photoshop, in RAW, So.
I didn't know it was like lucky.
Yeah, no, well, and back in those days, it's a busy street, and we're yelling. I go, do it again, and you're just, and I have photos of him. There might be one in the book, a Superman, where he's laying down like Superman, and I have him doing all sorts of different tricks, or semi-tricks. And then 10 years later, when he was my assistant, Todd Swank, and 10 years later, we shot a cover with Atiba doing a kickflip. And he was my assistant 10 years later. And we shot it in color. Back then, you had forms in the magazine. We would only have certain forms that were in color and some were in black and white. I mean, the cover we could always have, but I wanted his shot in color because it showed, okay, it's gone from pushing to kick flips in the street, and then I just wanted to show the evolution of skateboarding, and it's in color, and so, but we kind of did it at the same time of the day and everything, so it would match. Anything.
When you started photography, what was the most difficult to learn or to improve?
F-stops and shutter speeds, because I never went to school. So people would talk about f-stops and shutter speeds, and I go, what? You know, my roommate, who I borrowed the camera from, he said, you have to shoot at 1/500th of a second to freeze the action. I go, okay. But I couldn't even load the film. I didn't know how to load film. And then he taught me how to load film, and it was a Canon AE1, was the first camera, and then I ran out and bought a used Minolta. And then about a year and a half, I went into the dark room. And so, you know, I didn't have a loop, you know, a magnifier. I would just hold the negatives up. Oh, I guess they're good, you know. And then I took 3 photography classes, and I went for 2 years, and I took every photography class I could take, and then kind of took all that back to skating. Like I took studio photography, and that taught me how to use lights in the field, and it really helped a lot. And then being around all these photographers that shot all different kinds of things, you know. I just was, and then exposing, I started looking at books and seeing master photographers and, you know, and really getting into portraiture even back then. Yeah. Any other questions, real quick? I'm leaving Madrid. No.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.